Hello, WiCCD members. My name is Maya Shukeri, and I am WiCCD's Education Committee Director. I'm happy to introduce our series, Finding Your Niche. In this series, we will interview female criminal defense lawyers who practice in a specific area within criminal law. The goal of our series is to highlight the work and accomplishments of female criminal defense lawyers, but it is also a way for us to introduce you to specialty areas within criminal law. We hope we can help you find your niche. Enjoy the series. Hi, Ines. How are you?
Hi, Maya. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And so I'm gonna just because I think we don't have, well, we have your last name. We see it's I Gavran. Ines Gavran is my
Yes.
guest today for Finding Your Niche, our series for WiCCD. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today for the series. I'm very happy to meet you. I've been following you on social media, on Twitter, and I really love and enjoy your tweets. Very wise tweets and
Thank you
wise
very much.
words. So it's very nice to finally meet you, even if it's virtually right now for this
Likewise.
interview.
Well, thank you
But
very much for the invite. I truly appreciate it. It's truly a privilege to be part of this amazing group of women, and of course, meeting you because I've been also following a lot of women on Twitter. It's actually how I expanded my I would say network of women in criminal law. So I'm very pleased to meet you as well.
well, thank you, and it's the pleasure is mutual. And I just wanted to start in a so let's start with how we always start. Is if you can maybe introduce yourself, tell us about who you are, like where do you practice, and what type of cases do you take? Is it just criminal? Do you do things other than criminal? And what kind of firm do you practice in?
Yes, thank you. So I was called to the bar in 2016 and I opened my own practice shortly afterwards. Not necessarily by choice right away. I always wanted to have my own practice. But at the time, people, lawyers were not really hiring, at least those that I wanted to work for. So I told myself, well, you already wanted to do this, so might as well do it now. You know, it might be a little bit hard later on if you're on a salary to just then move and be on, make your own paycheck kind of setup. So I opened my own practice. I did. It was very hard, of course, in the beginning. I had one client, which I completely forgot that even the money he gave me was in trust and wasn't my money right away. So that was a tough lesson. But which means I had no money, even if I had money in the trust. But in any event, I did then, work as a waitress for some time, along with, going to court during the day. And it did help me pay some of my bills. And then I worked as well with some civil law firms to do what we call like doc review, which is pretty much just sorting out the evidence in their cases, either for them or against them, and privileged information. So that has helped me a lot with actually being able to sustain my business and my life while also, truly representing clients in a quality matter. So that, I didn't depend as much on my private clients to fund my business and pay my bills. I was doing that on the side to do that. So truly, whenever I had a client, I truly treated them as they need help, regardless of how much they pay me, if it's legal aid, or I even took pro bono because I truly could at that time. And also just to learn. So as my practice evolved, of course, things have gotten better, and I've taken more complex files, which I actually do enjoy more complex files. For example, I do a lot of sex assaults, even though they're very difficult and they can be very emotionally charged. That emotion that you feel on a tough case of sexual assault actually helps me push forward. It helps me truly, truly think about the case very strongly, and I'm able to find ways to defend the client. I also like to prepare the clients for trials, as much as sometimes it pains me. So it's, of course, a component of a sexual assault case is whether the client will testify and whether they'll do that in a good way. So I like those. I do a lot of over 80 and pairs as well. I do like them because they're very technical and because mostly it's cross-examination of the police officers, which I enjoy a lot, especially in over 80 and impaired, because it involves a lot of subjective view of the police officers. So I like to test them on that, on their subjective/objective viewpoints. And then apart from that, trafficking of firearms, drugs, that also is very interesting to me. And then I would say I do, also, I mean, apart from the sexual assault, sexual interference, and just recently I've been working on a human trafficking case, which involves sex work. That's a very tough one, I have to say. That it made me question a few times, do you really like complex files? But I do realize as much as they're complex, again, it sharpens my skills like no other case. And I think it's meant, it's good to have one of those to truly keep you on your toes and make sure that your standards are very high when it comes to representation of your client. So I still work by myself. I do intend to go a little bit into civil because I think the skills and the knowledge can be applied to civil law as well, that we have clearly earned in our criminal law practice. So that's something I'm still figuring out. And eventually I do intend to hire an associate, especially once I, decide to have children. I think it's very necessary. But for now, yes, mostly, I would say actually it's fully criminal, but it might change. But of course, once I start officially doing more civil, I do intend to keep my criminal law practice as my really large component of my practice. And then the civil would be, some files that help with, the business aspect of running a practice, but also just to do something different, like negotiations, which obviously civil law entails a lot of. So that's where I'm at this point.
All right. And how, because you do practice on your own, you have your own firm, how did you start getting these more complex cases? For anyone who's listening and who wants to start their own practice and they're interested in having more complex cases eventually, how did you get your first complex cases?
Thank you. So I think it's like when we want to achieve a result, you have like an end result, like where you're headed. You need to prepare very early for it because a complex file like this one, for example, human trafficking, does not come right away unless it's a referral or you have worked for a law firm and then you kind of get it. But for someone like me who started on my own with not knowing at all how to either have a business or how to defend anyone, you have to think of, first of all, truly delivering an exceptional service. What I used to tell my clients when I only had 3 clients or 2 or 5, and they said, well, why should we go for you? I mean, there's other lawyers out there and they're more senior. I said, look, you can go to a senior lawyer. Of course, it's your choice, but I can tell you a senior lawyer will give you maybe 10% or 20% of their time because they're busy. I will give you 100% of my time. I am new. I will give you 100% of my time. So I will make sure I learn everything I need to learn. I have colleagues, I have mentors, they can assist me. So do you want 20% representation on your case or you want 100%? And, they took a leap of faith and they went ahead with me. So from having few clients, then you truly deliver a great experience, I would say, because it's not just about representation when you're, because anybody can do that. Truly, any lawyer is supposed to be competent to represent a client. But what I mean by experience is that you also give them that mental comfort. You make sure to tender to them when they need to talk to you, even just to, kind of like distress about the case. I made sure I give like an all-inclusive service. I treat to this day my clients as my friends. If they need me, I'm there for them. If they have a burning questions, I want to answer them right now because I am hired for that. To make sure that I also let them know, like, don't worry, we got this. This is what we're looking at. This is what's against us. But look, there's a plan for this. So all that led me to, I think, getting better clients in terms of like more complex cases, because at the time, my current clients were spreading the word about who I am as a lawyer, and they were writing reviews, and they were talking to their friends. And then as they write really good reviews, people read them. And I think that's the best way. I had some other clients. I worked on actually a murder case. It's a famous case, but it's like a triple murder case. Only when I was a year into my practice. And there was a question asked about like, well, why should that person, go ahead for me? How do I prove to them that I'm worthy of working for them? But I said, look, give me work and I'll show you. I'm not here to prove to you I can work. I can tell you that I'm willing to give it my 100%, but I'm not here to try to prove you anything. You can give me your case and I'm going to work, on your case, and you will see how I work. And that's what I tell all potential clients. Look, read what my previous clients have said about me, and that's your best way of analyzing who I am. Or let's start with a limited retainer. I will do XYZ for you. And you decide. You can always decide to stay with me or, go ahead with someone else. So I think just like being very open with clients, and then, of course, doing exceptional work is key. And then as clients spread the word about you, or, you collect those reviews, which is very important. On Google, for example, you put them on your website, you ask the client's permission if they write like a really nice thank you note in your email or text, you ask their permission, you're going to, redact their name, but if you can just post it, I post it on Instagram, I post it on Twitter, I post on Facebook, not as much to just show to the people that I'm successful. That's not the point. Number one, it's to encourage good client service. I think it's important that all lawyers are inspired by other lawyers to always deliver the best they can. Number two, it attracts clients. Number three, it spreads the words to other lawyers or other people, for example, on your Twitter, that your clients are happy with you. The way that I see it is like, if you were to be charged, would you want to be represented by someone that someone has really great things to say? And I would say yes, 100%. So all that, like those small wins, even if it's a small theft under case, truly will lead you to getting more complex file. Exactly. Case. And sometimes I don't know where they come from. Like the family will just call me and say, hey, we would like you to represent, and I have no clue based on what they decided, but what I can assume it's from my website. I try to have my website represent me, and of course, like I have given some interviews to CTV. I think that's very important to try to, be noticed by the media, because it does give you credibility in terms of the general public. Public watches news, and they think if you're on the news, you must be someone, and especially if you're on the news and you say something smart, I think then for sure it gives you credibility. So you have to kind of hit different aspects of your life in order to attract, like better files in terms of like more complex or, private clients who are willing to pay a lot of money to represent them. It comes down your track record.
But I wanted to ask you, Ines, because you did mention social media, and that you advertise, or you will, post about the results of some cases that you have. But did you actually, or do you get clients from social media?
No, I wouldn't say I've really gotten that many from social media. I did have friends referring me clients, for example, but often it may not be exactly like criminal. But I would say Google for sure, and the website.
Yes.
That's number
website one. Definitely, I agree. I mean, it is important to have a website, especially if you're on your own, right? Like when you have your own practice, it's very important to have your own website, and it gives also credibility that you are a real lawyer, because you're present on the web.
Exactly. And the other important thing is, like, when you think about getting a client, it's not just the client who calls. You still didn't get that client. That client only knocked on your door. You still have to walk them in. So I think what's extremely important when they knock on your door, that at that one phone call or interview you have with them, they truly have a sense of how you will represent them. Like, they have to feel like how it would be to work with you. And I think really that's one of my skill set, and I've developed that. It's not like I knew how to sell my services or myself. You truly have to make them feel comfortable. That's number one. They're coming to you, number one, for comfort. Yes, it's to represent, to have representation, but that they can get that from anybody. What you want to do is get their stress down, because they're emotional. Like, people are emotional, and what they want to do is make, have their lawyer make them feel better. So when I meet with a client, even by phone, I make sure to take my time to truly answer their questions, say things that, for example, if I cannot give them specific advice, I will say that, but I will say, look, all your questions will be answered, once I have your case, then I can truly look at both sides of the versions, including yours. But I have to look at everything before I can give you an opinion. But don't worry, we will do that. You will know at every stage what's happening, and I'll take your input. So once you explain to them, they feel like, okay, like someone's taking care of me. So they will trust your judgment on the case itself.
But on this taking care aspect, so I want to dive a bit more into this because this could be sometimes problematic for some lawyers. It's to what extent? I mean, like I know you mentioned that you like to be kind of a friend to your clients, but I mean, the danger here, of course, is that sometimes you don't want lines to be crossed. But I find, especially with female lawyers, you kind of also want to show that there are limits. You're still the lawyer, you're not the babysitter, you're not, like the girlfriend, you're not, like a therapist, because sometimes, especially in very emotional cases or very intimate cases where there's a lot of, the client has to be vulnerable and tell you a lot of personal things, like they might, like it might get more on the emotional side. And, it can be tricky here in terms of the lawyer-client relationship. So how do you manage that? Like, I mean, like when you say that you're kind of a friend to them, like friend in the sense that they can call you anytime, you'll answer, and you're like their
No.
therapist, you listen to their complaints
No,
all
if I
the
was
time.
to do
Yeah.
if I was to do all that, I wouldn't be able to work on their case. I
Yeah.
mean, it would just be a lot of absorbed time. You wouldn't have left time
Right.
for anything else. No, what I mean by friend is the feeling you give them. That's what I mean. Like
So is
when
it
you're sitting with
trust
a
or
friend,
friend? Like
exactly,
trust.
like
Okay.
trust and that like good energy and that openness, that honest
Right.
conversation. That's what I mean by friend. When they ask you, when they need you, you let them know, okay, I see your email, I will respond to it very quickly, I'm just in a trial. So you take care of them truly like you would a friend. Now, in terms of how you communicate with them, there has to be a happy medium. The way I talk to my clients is I will be firm in things that I need to be firm. Like, look, we'll discuss this once this time comes, or today I'm in a trial, I cannot, I can't speak to you, but look, on the weekend I will give you a call, make sure to prepare all your questions, and we'll talk about it then.
Right.
So then just by the kind of sternness in my voice, they understand, oh, okay, I can't talk to her right now, she's busy. But then when I do call them, I said, hey, I don't know, let's say Jessica, hey Jessica, how are you, how was your weekend? Good. Oh, good. You had a birthday party for your son. That's good. How was it? And then, okay, tell me your questions. Go, this. Okay, perfect. I answered them. Anyway, anything else? No. Okay, great. Look, I will need 2 weeks to look into this and I'll get back to you. So you see, like it has to be a mix of the approaches. It can be all in one. So I'm also very clear that when sometimes a client can pass the boundary, like texting late or calling late, in a very nice way. The next day I said, look, you can talk to me anytime, but I need to sleep and I can be disturbed around certain times. It's my personal time. But next time, if you need truly have an urgent question, just send me an email. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I always look at my emails. So I will respond to you if it's truly that burning question.
Right.
So again, the friendship just means the feeling, but your voice and your demeanor towards the client still has to be professional, because that's how they feel. They can't push you around, and there's a certain boundary they cannot cross without truly telling it, because it creates a little bit of friction when you have to tell them, don't do this,
Yeah. And you're based in Toronto, right? Like right now, your firm is in Toronto, but you weren't always living in Toronto. So maybe we can go back a bit and talk about how, like before you became a lawyer, because you do have an interesting background in Police Foundation. And it's very interesting that despite that background in Police Foundation, you chose to become a criminal defense lawyer, not a Crown attorney. So maybe if you can tell us a bit more about that and why, what led you to become criminal defense lawyer as opposed to a crime?
Absolutely. So when I was younger, I had kind of two passions. One was to become a doctor, a surgeon, and then the other passion was crime. I don't know. I just loved like serial murders. I loved the psychology behind them. I just really was fascinated by the psychology of a crime. Like, why does someone do it? How do they do it? How do they get caught? So I ended up going, and I was like, okay, I want to become a police officer, because that's when I came to Canada, because I want to become a detective, So, so I went to Police Foundations, and that's actually for the first time where I've learned criminal law. My teacher was this really tough prosecutor, well, a crown attorney, but we called him prosecutor in Quebec. So it was a French college in Ottawa. And he was like super stern and super serious, and I kind of liked that. It was great having someone with that much authority. He would just look at me, and I would just like drop my bagel because I was eating in class. I'm like, I'm so sorry. So anyway, so he gave me a lot of passion for the way he was teaching it. I learned criminal law, and I truly enjoyed it. And I am going not to be very humble right now, but I had 100% in criminal law. So that told me, okay, I really understand this well. So the police foundation itself, it was great. I just truly loved it. You know, you physically were tested, you were mentally tested, you were emotionally tested. We were not a lot of girls, it was mostly men. But, you know, I grew up with two brothers, so it was easy for me to get along with men. I also learned a lot about who they take for police, you know, who are the individuals and the characters that are going towards becoming policemen. That was very important to learn. A lot of them, unfortunately, were very insecure people who had a need for having authority and a say, you know, without being punished for it. And it's true, that was the majority at least. Not as much in my class, but in other classes, I would say. And then once I graduated, I did graduate with honors. Again, I just truly loved the whole program. But then I was like, I think I was 19 when I graduated, or about to be 20. And then I said to myself, oh, okay, I am from Gatineau. I mean, you know, I study in Ottawa, but I'm in Gatineau. I'm 21 years old. I still want to like go out, have fun. But if I become a police officer, I can't do that. It's such a small town. I mean, what I would be going to a club while seeing the person I arrested. So it was going to cut my like young life short. So I said, okay, you know, maybe I'm going to wait a little bit before I pursue this career. So I just got like a job at a Canada Post as like, it was like a client representative. And I was thinking all the time, well, where do I want to go with my life? You know, I still want to become a detective, but I truly love criminal law. And yeah, I would love to be a police officer, but that means I have to cut a lot of like social aspect of my life. I would prefer to be like a classy woman while working in criminal law. You know, that's the way I envision myself. And then I'm like thinking, well, you know, I could become a criminal lawyer. That would be interesting because I can be myself. I can dress well. I can look good in sense like, you know, being dressed and not just being as a police officer having
But
to like.
doesn't that also cut your social life as well? I mean, like maybe you would have had more time being a police
It
officer
does, you
than
know,
being a criminal defense lawyer.
it is true. It cuts my social life, but I have
Yeah,
to say, when I have a social
sadly.
life, I'm the most popular person in the room, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Everybody's like, "Ooh, do you defend the guilty?" And then I'm
yeah,
like, "Well, let me tell you." So
yeah.
it does cut it, but again, it's a fine balance, right? But anyway, so then I actually got laid off. It was almost like things were meant to happen, but I got laid off at that job. Everybody was getting laid off, and then I said, you know what? I'm just going to go to law school. And my mom was like, "Thank God." She always wanted me to be a lawyer, and I was always like, I'm going to be a police officer. And she's like, oh my God. She's not a fan of them anyway. So I went to then, you know, University of Ottawa into civil law first because I was French. And I truly discovered how much there is more to criminal law than just obviously what I've learned in college. It was more in depth, obviously. And I truly loved it. I had a really good grade. And so anyway, so once I finished law school, I was looking for a job. And like I've said, it was hard to find in a small city like Ottawa, you know, an articling position that pays well and that, you know, you work for someone that you feel like you could that could be an example for you. So there wasn't that many opportunities. So I applied to Toronto and then, you know, got the articling job and then moved here.
Okay, and so you worked as a lawyer really mainly in Toronto since
Yes, I started with
yeah.
articling and then on my own. Yes.
Okay, and so you did mention that you came to Canada. So where are you originally from, Ines?
Croatia.
Okay, and so did you learn how to speak English here, or did you already know how to speak English when you moved to
Yes.
Canada?
So in Croatia, mostly it was just Croatian language, but English was a mandatory kind of like secondary language. But
Okay.
it was very, I mean, the TV, we would watch it also, like American movies, we would watch them like they're English, but the subtitles would be Croatian. But I didn't know that much English at all because I came here when I was 11 and a half. So we didn't like in Croatia, they didn't teach really 11-year-olds much English because it wasn't that important for that age.
Yeah.
And then when we moved here, actually, I had to learn French. So even the little English I knew it was like not useful because we moved to Gatineau and I had to learn French, and that was a struggle on its own. It took me a long time to learn French because it's completely different from Croatian, and then English. In fact, actually, the English that I speak right now, it improved a lot over the years. But even when I was articling, my English was not good because like yes, like the regular spoken English, but not the professional English because my whole law school was in French. So then I come here to Toronto, and when I was articling, but even when I became a lawyer, I had a hard time to pronounce like recognizance. I would be there, on the microphone saying it 4 times in a row and butchering it every time, and then everybody's just looking at me like, "What are you trying to say?" So I would just say, "Never mind that word," and like that happened to me so many times where my English isn't the best, especially if I'm tired. But I've learned to own it. I am not a person with first language being English, and I'm allowed to make mistakes, but I still make sure that my message gets through, of course. And as you work more in an English environment, your English improves.
Well, I mean, it's a very good right now, and it's impressive that it's something that you learned later, like when you were 11. You weren't born and you learned
No,
how to
no.
speak English right away, but you do speak French then, I guess, since you
Yes,
had
yes,
to learn how to speak
I
French.
had to learn.
So there's another interesting thing about your background as well, Ines, that I think, I mean, I would like to ask you about is that because while you were a student in law school, you actually were Miss Canada at
Yes.
some point. So maybe you can tell us about that because I don't think I know a lot of people who were Miss Canada. So that's a very cool and different experience. So if you don't mind
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, it all kind of started when I was, prior to going to law school, I was involved a little bit with Miss Quebec. I was, a young girl, back then I would say was very, kind of like popular to, try to be Miss Quebec or like, I think young girls, at least when I was a younger girl, looked up to being like, oh, that pretty girl who wins, Miss something and means you're beautiful and smart and this and that. Like it's like you have everything that maybe one would expect to have as a woman. And so I wanted that. But then a lot of years passed and I truly didn't care anymore for it, especially when I grew up and learned it's really not about looks or being the one or the perfect one. What mattered the most was who you are as a person. I truly believe that. And so when I was in law school, I was really tired because it's law school and we had to study a lot, and I was working as well as a waitress. And then I had no fun. And so the director messaged me and said, we are looking to have Miss Canada this year. Would you like to participate as a contestant? And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, you can come to Montreal and it will be an all expenses paid trip. And I was like, count me in. If you're saying
Yeah.
it's all paid and that it's fun and we're going to be doing spa and this and that, and I truly needed a day spa, so I said, sure, why not? And then it worked out with the dates, in terms of exams. So I went, and I swear, did not expect to win. I did not even care about winning. All I cared was I was with like a bunch of other girls. We were all having so much fun. We're conducting interviews. I really like doing interviews, like in terms of me being questioned about, it's almost like a job interview. I like them. I like that challenge. So we were doing that and just being, doing a lot of like, kind of like, helping community and stuff like that. So I had so much fun. And then when it was time to do all those interviews based on which they decide, especially on the stage, like you have this like earphones and they're asking questions of the other girls. And then it's your turn and you have like maybe, I don't know, a minute or two max. Honestly, it's often just a minute to answer the question. I love that. It was a challenge. And I
Yeah.
truly just spoke from the heart. There was no way to prepare your answer because they don't tell you the answer beforehand. But I told myself, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to say. And this is what I truly believe. Either you like it or you don't like it. But I'm not here to please anybody. I'm here truly, you're giving me, a platform to voice my opinion, and I'm going to voice it. I am, after all, going to become a lawyer. I mean, I was in law school. So,
Yeah.
so then I would just say what I think and what I believed. And anyway, so when it was time to decide on top 5, I made top 5, and then top 3, I made. So then, yeah, I think it was in top 3, and then they chose like the Miss Canada. But anyway, I was shocked when I won. I was like, oh my God, I truly won. And then I was thinking, like, I don't have time to win because I'm in law school. I'm working 30 hours a week, barely seeing my family, barely seeing my friends. So I was like in panic mode. I was like going home and I'm like, calling my family, by the way, I won. They're like, what? They're like, we didn't think, like, you said you're not going to compete. I said, I wasn't. I was just, having fun.
So your parents weren't with you? They didn't go to
no, they couldn't come because there was the day of the competition. I forgot. I think it was like a Saturday or something. But my family couldn't come, and it was totally fine because, like I said, I didn't intend on like winning. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just part of end of this fun, So then I call them like I won. They're like, what? So anyway, winning Miss Canada, it was great. I did do some interviews out of that. The work, of course, I wasn't able to give it. There was a lot of things once you are Miss Canada.
Commitments. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like business side to it, and I didn't agree with a lot of business side, and I voiced it, and they didn't like it too much. But I said, look, you've chosen me for my standards, my values. I'm not going to change that now. That I'm Miss Canada. You don't get to tell me what is right for me, what I should be doing. If I disagree with the way you're conducting this business, because it is a business, I am not going to do it. And I don't care if I'm Miss Canada, you don't get to push me. I am representing your company. So, so I had to put my foot down in terms of that. And, I I had a little bit of disagreements with them because I've learned, they've told me also, look, like we're going to send you to for Miss International, like Miss World. They were going to put me on a salary, and then I would have to quit school. And I'm like, no way, I want to be a lawyer. Yeah. I'm not interested in pursuing this further. So anyway, so kind of like I didn't do that much work in terms of Miss Canada, but I loved that I won it, and I won it, with me being me, and not being shaped by what the company wanted me to represent, which was like not necessarily the things that I stood for. So that's how it ended up, that whole thing.
Nice, but I mean, still, I mean, you still won, and it's even better when you win when you're least expecting to win.
For
so
sure.
That's a very nice thing.
It was great, yeah.
But did that experience help you in any way in your career as a lawyer?
I think
other than maybe I mean, like from what I see, it's just that like if you just be who you are, you can succeed, right? Like you can do something and you can achieve something if you're just being authentic. You stick to who you are. I mean, that's something that you also need when you're developing your personality as a lawyer. You don't have to be like someone else. You can just be yourself, and that is enough. But what else did that experience teach you?
So there was, I would say, in terms of opportunities, in terms of like the law, right? Being a criminal lawyer, it did not offer me opportunities. I did not get a job. I didn't get a job in terms of like my articling position because I was Miss Canada. It wasn't that. It helped people notice me. For example, when I applied for my articling job that I ended up having here in Toronto, which is why I moved. I'm sure that the managing partner noticed, Miss Canada as part of my I would say like life experience, which is it was important for me to put it because I was competing. It was a competition based on many aspects, right? I mean, looks was truly the last one. It was amazingly beautiful women there. It's no longer just about the looks, It was truly the mental, the social skills.
And is the competition hard in Miss Canada? I mean, like when you're doing the actual thing. I mean,
yes, mentally.
When you watch it, it seems like it's very easy, very natural for everyone. But is it hard behind the scenes?
So yes, I would say it's not that hard. It was hard on the interviews. Interviews, you have to be sharp. That's really where you truly test it. The rest, from my perspective, you be you. If who you are is who you are. It's only hard if you're trying to fit a certain mold, which I wasn't. This is who I am. If we're coming on a dinner and we're having a dinner and we need to speak to certain directors, I'm not working hard. I'm being myself. I'm approaching them, discussing subjects that I wanted to discuss, but it was just hard in terms of the questions, right? Because you truly had to give it your all. But again, I didn't even find that hard, because again, I just spoke from what I believed. But in terms of opportunities, it didn't give me opportunities. It made me stand out, I would say, which is important. Whatever you can do, I would say, in this profession, or if you're about to go into this profession, why not stand out? Number one, why not? We're all unique, why not push yourself outside of the box? But number two, the Miss Canada truly just affirmed to me that standing my own, especially with the experience I had after I won, that standing my ground is the most important. So when it came to having a job opportunity where I'm being challenged on my position, because I was, and it was a great time. I honestly had the best experience in securing that articling position. I stood my ground, and I was myself, even if I was being tested, even if I was maybe inclined to, well, I'm going to give an answer that I think he wants to hear. I was like, no, I will give an answer that I believe in, and whether he likes it or not. And that's what I did. And that got me the job, because those are the skills, those are the things you have to have as a lawyer. You can't become a trial lawyer by trying to be like Marie Henein. You can look at her and say, what, these are amazing things she has, and if I have similar skills, I'll try to mimic some of those, just so that my skill can improve. But you're still yourself. You should still be purely yourself, and that's the most important thing in being a lawyer, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's very fascinating and interesting talking to you, Ines, because I mean, you have a very interesting background and lots of, experience in in different things before becoming criminal defense lawyer. And I mean, I can talk to you for hours, even though, I'm just meeting you for the first time. I unfortunately have to though end this interview, but it was really very interesting to chat with you, and thank you for taking the time and sharing your background, your experience, and best of luck for everything that you do. It seems like you're doing very well.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for offering this opportunity, and for the time you've been giving, of course, to this interview and the rest of the lawyers that had the pleasure to be interviewed by you. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Ines.
You're welcome.